Good afternoon and welcome to Be Yoga Live with Jenny B. I'm your host, Jenny B, coming to you from Montreal. And I have here with me today, I'm so excited to have Jayme Hernandez joining us today. There's a lot I could say about Jayme. Usually at the beginning of these shows, I launch into how I know people, because up to now it's been people that I mostly have some kind of personal connection with. I don't even know what category I would put Jayme in. For sure, we're friends, but Jayme started off as my teacher 10 years ago. I don't know if you even remember that, but it was a birth workshop that I took when I was pregnant with my little girl who just turned 10.
Oh yeah, of course I remember that.
And it was in a home. I don't know if it was your home, but it was in a carpeted basement, and it was
yes.
It was this magical, when you're pregnant for the first time, it was this magical land that I went into, and we were making all these noises. And of course, years later, I would go on to teach all of these noises to other people.
Yeah.
So I knew Jayme in that context. And then with my second pregnancy, she ended up being my yoga teacher as well by some weird substitute fluke thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And in Verdun, like in another area of the city. And then I decided to be a yoga teacher, and that was where I landed as one of Jayme's students. And then we have at least 10 years of history. We've run into each other here and there, have many, many good conversations. And I think most recently, and the reason that Jayme's here on the show today is that I've seen her pop up in life as this business guru. So to go from prenatal expert, postnatal yoga teaching expert, to now watching her with such passion and enthusiasm, coaching people in the wellness industry has been super inspiring. So blah, blah, blah about Jayme. I love you so much. I'm so happy that you're here joining us. And I was hoping you could just give us a little introduction of yourself and what you're currently up to.
Well, you had asked me the question, what got you into yoga? And I made me think, when I was 10 years old, our teacher had asked us, like, do an oral presentation on anything you want. So here I am, bright-eyed 10-year-old in the library, like, okay, what do I do? And I see this book, this kind of very interesting looking book with a little boy with a dress on. And I started to read it, and it was about women trapped in men's body who feel like they're trapped in men's body, or vice versa. And it was also about near-death experiences. So it was like a very interesting subject for me. And I presented it to the class. And, I think when you're 10, you really just present with your honesty, and you just, whatever you read, right? So it's like, people were talking about, how they had these near-death experiences, and they were like, all of a sudden, a butterfly that turned into a flower that turned into light. And I just, I just talked about that to my grade 4 class, right? And so, I'm thinking about that now, thinking about these topics now. And my teacher even asked me, do you want to present that to the school? And there was part of me that was like, I'm not sure if they're going to receive this very esoteric, out there subject. So I guess all that to say is that I've always been interested in human evolution, the complexity of human and soul, since I was freaking.
I think you said all that to say you've just always been a little bit weird. That's what I was going to take from
that. So, and now, you're saying, okay, this big business girl. The other thing that I've always been interested is entrepreneurship and yoga. Those have been my two things. But I was always a little bit, I have to say, a little bit ashamed of the business side, because I would sometimes express myself to my peers, right, on Unraveling the Money Shave, right? And I would sort of get this sense of oh, what you're doing is not about making money. It's not about marketing. It's not about any of that stuff. And I got that, but it was also my inner truth. I'm like, but I'm so nerdy about it. I love, me, this deep, cathartic spiritual work, but I also love the entrepreneur side of things, because you really can create whatever you want. So that's what's exciting to me about it. And that's why I finally got over my own kind of insecurities and say, well, you know what? I'm going to talk about yoga and business. And too bad. That's just what I'm excited about.
And see, and that is not something that's new. And I remember when I was taking, I can't remember what I was learning from you, but we did a number of private instruction in your home. I remember sitting there and you'd be making breakfast and we've been chatting. And it was, I had, I guess, kind of already been teaching yoga by this point. We were looking at something on your fridge. You had some kind of thing. And anyway, even though I had been teaching yoga for some time, these ideas of manifestation, co-creation, vibration were all very foreign to me. And I think you either introduced me to Louise Hay or Abraham Hicks or both. I'm not sure where you were in that time, but you were talking about basically manifesting whatever the hell you wanted. And I remember kind of looking at you like, what is she talking about? So now I get it. And I'm actually pretty good at it. But at that time, however many years ago, it's like, what vibration? Like, what? Yeah, was it the word vibrate? It was some, and like, I think this happens that when you have a teacher, it's you might not really understand what they're talking about at the time. And I had that experience in your kitchen. I don't remember what, I think it was about teacher training. You were manifesting a certain amount of students or something. Now, my friend Mika and I do this with our hypnobirthing. We set how many people we wanted. Right. That amount of people is in our class, you know, but at the time I was like, what is Jayme on about? So I'm willing to bet that this conversation about unraveling money shame might be another one of those moments where I'm like, all right, what is Jayme on about? So why don't you, if you could tell us, what do you mean by money shame, and what have you kind of noticed? You gave us a little example a moment ago of like, people may be criticizing you for wanting to manifest those things in your life. How dare you want to have stuff, right? You should be a poor yoga teacher. That's what I'm understanding is kind of the general vibe, right? You should, so what kind of people have you come across in these last little while and their assumptions or approaches?
Well, one, I think everything that's happening within you manifests outside of you. So whatever shame I have in me, which I still have, is going to be a manifestation outside of me. So anybody vibing in that same kind of frequency is going to be my mirror, right? So my own shame is always going to be somebody else, maybe me feeling judged, but any judgment is self-judgment, right? So I think it allows me to see where I'm at. And I think, I think that's just the way it works. And I think it's an opportunity for us to really like, oh, okay, so this made me feel uncomfortable. I felt judged, which really is a sense of inner judgment, right? And so it made me really look deeper into myself about it, because, I wanted to really face that part of me that felt like I wasn't allowed, or I didn't have permission, or I shouldn't be like, into entrepreneurship or marketing or making money or wanting to expand and have this big dream, whatever that looks like for me. So I think it was a lot about learning how to give myself permission to really own what it is that's true for me. And I think for everybody else, it should be the same thing, where it's like everybody has their own inner truth, And so the more you just allow yourself to have that truth, you're going to find people who may be friction against that. You might find people who align with that, and it's all good, because again, I feel like we're just manifesting that reality anyway from within. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I'm wondering what are some, and this is a little personal, but this is fun. This is what this show is about. What are some of the things that you might have, the things or experiences that you might have wanted that you found yourself being judged by other people for wanting them? I'm going to throw this. I need to buy a friggin' car. And you know what? I need the car for lots of reasons. Yeah. And I put up on Facebook that I want to buy a car. Yeah. And I want to buy a car, and does anybody have any advice? And of course, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you go on Facebook looking for advice on such a controversial subject as wanting to buy a car. Because I'm a yoga teacher, what do I need a car for? So there was some judgment. There was some great advice by other people who actually have opinions and who own cars. But I already felt embarrassed about it and already felt shameful about it for environmental reasons, for whatever. So anyway, why am I saying all this? I'm wondering, I'm wondering what are some of the things that you wanted or experiences you wanted to have, and you were met by that same kind of like, well, Jayme, you shouldn't want a car because you're a yoga teacher, or Jayme, you shouldn't want to own a condo because you're a yoga teacher.
I think what I was hoping for, especially because I don't really share like my big vision dreams with just anybody. I do share them with my close friends. So, you know, I think that hits your I guess what you call ego a little bit more, and also your wounds a little bit more when you share it with somebody who you trust, and then you sort of get this like, you know, what you're doing is not about that, you know, kind of that resistance. And I guess in the moment, it triggers you, right? Because what happens, and what my experience is, what happens is that when we were younger, because, you know, we weren't born in this world, and you know this because we work with babies, like not allowed. We weren't born with not enough. We weren't born with, I'm not allowed to ask for what I want. We weren't born with, there's not enough, right? Babies, it's like, you better give me what I want now, and I'm gonna like scream about it until I get it. And so there's no shame. There's no like, oh my gosh, you're selfish and greedy kid because you want some milk. Like you come into this world saying, oh, this is what I want, you know, and you come into that place, a very expansive place, and you're hoping to receive that same vibration. But again, I think it's an opportunity, right? It's like you want the same vibration, but at the same time, I think it shows you also, it mirrors where you're at with it. Because if you feel judged, what I've learned is that there's part of that judgment that is still there, that somebody along the line gave you the message that you weren't allowed. You weren't allowed to want more than what you have. You're not allowed to ask for more. You're not allowed to be bigger than just this, you know? So there's a real sense of, just not allowedness, not enoughness, not permitting. And I think when somebody kind of throws it back or projects it back, or you're projecting, you're both projecting, it's your opportunity to see like, oh, okay, it's still living in me, because it's almost like that message that wasn't yours to begin with, you relive it in your body. Your body literally feels like, oh, I gotta be small again. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm not supposed to talk about what I like, right? And your energy literally like, okay, I'm gonna get small again. So you almost like relive the trauma over again, and it seems so real at the time, in the moment, but really it's just that same trauma from way back when that is being triggered again. And again, it's like another opportunity to say, life is like, okay, here, let's just show this to you again so that you can face it, you know, because that's what spiritual work is about, that, right? It's not about just like, whoo, it's like, shit, like, let's look
hopefully it is.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel, I sometimes wonder what people are up to, but could it be something as simple, like, are you guiding clients or students through, just when you're talking there, I'm thinking about the way that our parents speak about money as we're growing up. Like, this must be a very big part of whether we're blocked on, you know, like, if I spent so much money on that, and now, you know, like whatever our parents' attitudes were toward money, of course, we hear them. We hear if there's a lack, we hear if there's an abundance. And I've always been pretty aware of that. And I mean, I'm a yoga teacher. How much money do I have? But and that's a separate conversation.
And that's also a collective consciousness.
It
right?
definitely is. But I don't want my kids, and they're not poor, and I'm not poor, and I've never been poor. Everything is relative, right? And I try to make that obvious for them, that they look at, like, you know, family members' houses who live in big houses in the suburbs with, you know, 2 or 3 floors and a couple of cars, and they look at that like, oh, wow. And I try to make them realize that actually you are quite rich, whether, you know, you do live in an apartment with 3 bedrooms in Montreal, you're actually quite rich in the grand scheme of things. I never want them to hold that kind of feeling of lack, because I actually don't feel in lack at the moment. So anyway, all that to say, is this the kind of thing that you're working through with students that are now adults who have maybe took on what their parents were saying, whether it was true or not, and taking that in?
Yeah, exactly. Like the first thing we do is we look at that, because one, the way it surfaces is a trigger. If you have chronic triggering kind of emotions, anger, frustration, that's kind of like the superficial of your deep core wound. So the very first thing we do is we clear the physical body. Like I said, it's like we have literally like a posture, right, of how we feel when we are kind of contracted or want to feel small. We literally have something going on in our mind, right? We have a story, and our mind needs to have sort of this rationale to what's happening. So, like, I'll give you an example. We had one of our clients, and her parents used to fight a lot, right? And often fight about her. And so her body would kind of want to like go into the shadows. And her mind was like, oh, her baby mind, right, was like, oh, okay, well, maybe if I wasn't here, nobody would fight. That was her story, right? And energetically, literally, we looked at her chakras and they were literally like pushed to the back. So she literally, anytime she felt conflict in anything, in her business, in her relationship with people on the street, she would feel that like, oh, I want to disappear. Oh, I want to numb out. Ooh, okay, I shouldn't be here. And then, punch in the gut feeling. Like she would literally relive that over and over again. And when we kind of made the relationship between that and her relationships, her business, it was like, oh my God, we didn't even realize like, oh my God, I'm living this over and over and over and over again. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say are some of the reasons that those of us who are consider themselves, I like the term spiritual entrepreneur. I'm not sure that I owned it. I like it a lot. It could mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean just teaching yoga. But what are some other examples that you see or reasons that you can come up with that we might have shame around money?
Fundamentally, and I know I keep on repeating the same thing, but fundamentally, the reasons is somebody who was taking care of us at often a very young age. Because, when you're young, if your mom says, hey, your hair's too curly, you probably spend a lot of time trying to straighten it. And you're like, okay, whatever mom or dad or whoever says, grandma says,
my mom just straightened it. She just straightened it for me, Jayme, with an iron. That's all.
Right? So she almost just did it for you. And that probably gave you some kind of subconscious message that, oh my God, I have to put it like back or whatever for the longest time until you're like, okay, let it be free and curly and like wild. Right? So it's like we have these unconscious, people have shame around money because there's an unconscious message that told them they weren't allowed. And when money is just a symbol. So that's the other thing I want to kind of make clear here. Money is just a symbol of like, freedom, of joy, of space, of abundance, of a certain type of feeling, right? Of time, right? And so if you were always kind of being, let's say, scolded for not being fast enough or not being smart enough or, so you're always messing everything up, or that's like a scarcity, like you're not, the message, the overall message is you're not enough. And so money is really just a symbol. We live in a 3D world, but in the way I see things and experience things, I feel like this is an infinite world. And so we as human beings come down on earth to experience finite. Like, what does it mean to have a beginning and an end? But in reality, there's no beginning and end. But because sometimes as human beings, we come into this world and it really feels so real, right? There is a beginning and their end, and we do feel it. Like I think that's the strength of being human, is that we deeply feel pain. We feel it so viscerally, it hurts. And I think when you're an etheric being, you don't necessarily have that visceral kind of like, hurt. And so this experience of, and that's all I think really what we're trying to do here is to experience, like, what is it to have a beginning and end? What is it to have like, and so what happens, I think sometimes is we identify with, we are this in this box, and it has a beginning and an end. I make this much money, and this is what it is, when really the number is just a number. Because in reality, everything is infinite. And that's what I use I use money because it's such a, it's such a touchy subject, and it's a very practical thing we need. But at the same time, sometimes what happens is we over-identify with what our limits are, when we are limitless beings. And so when you break somebody's paradigm of what they feel that they can earn, what are they worth, and you break that, like, oh, actually, I don't even have an actual like numerical value really, because I'm an infinite being. And so you start to expand your ability to think outside of what you have identified with or what you have been told collectively, as a citizen, as from a family unit. So it can be a super powerful thing, a super powerful thing for people to almost break the identity that they were almost given, right? And a lot of us are given a box. And like you said, as a yogi, we're this bohemian, we have to serve and we have to love and we have to just give for free, but we also have expansive like visions. And I think that expansive vision is hard to hear when we have that core wound that constantly like is like our lens that we don't necessarily even realize we're seeing from, right? And so
please, I'm trying to understand what it is for those of us who are in helping professions, again, we'll go back to the spiritual entrepreneurship, because someone who is a nurse or a doctor is helping.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's too many doctors feeling bad about the amount of money they're making. Do you know what I mean? Like what is that? Like if you really take the power that we both know yoga has and how we're literally changing lives for the better. I'm having an aha moment, Jayme, and everybody watching. Yes. It happened. I got it. I knew I would get it. But you understand my question, like what the hell is that about? Like if a doctor or a nurse, and I like nurses in the time of COVID, like God bless you. It's not what I mean, but I'm thinking there aren't too many doctors who are experiencing money shame. And not to poo-poo doctors, this is the thing that I think that I have found myself doing. My kids see Jeff Bezos as the Antichrist. Like my kids see, thanks to their mom, Jeff Bezos as, and I kind of do too. I think there's got to be some kind of line somewhere, and he's crossed it. And I think where I have an issue with making lots of money is when you're exploiting other people, and that's the category that I see that in. So I'm raising my kids probably with some kind of money story that they'll have to unpack in a number of years that includes Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. And so again, because money is just a symbol and it also exposes more of who you are. So like we're talking like if me and you had $10, $100, $200, what we would do with it, and let's say and I give this example, like if we were to go to lunch together, we'd probably like, dude, let's put our like $20 together so we can get a whole bunch of like stuff. It only expands who you are. So it's not the amount, it's the intention behind it. And it's what you're committed to, right? So I don't think the amount should be judged. I don't think we should say, oh my God, you can only earn this much, right? And to answer your question, like where does it come from? It comes from people saying, well, doctors, it's a collective conscious, right? Doctors make a lot of money. Yoga teachers are these poor bohemians, right? Like it's a paradigm that we have subscribed to and say, and that's what, for me with the entrepreneurship is like, I'm like, guys, I don't subscribe to that. Like, I really do feel like I could make millions. And I know in my heart of hearts with my intention, like that is going to be an expansive tool for myself, my family, and everybody who comes into my vortex, into my life, because then I can also break their paradigm and say, oh my God, I can do that too. I'm not saying you have to want $1 million, but if that's in your truth? Is that in your truth of really hearing? Like I said, like when you start to clear your physical, your mental, your energy, and you actually hear that, because often when we hear like our soul, it's like, what, huh? What did you just say, universe? Like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. But it helps us not see through that lens anymore and like, oh, okay, let me receive, because the universe is going to give you an infinite, expansive possibility of possibilities. And you get out of the, oh my gosh, this is a problem. I only earn this much to, oh, wait a minute, what is the possibility?
I
And you
would
can
think though,
stand up.
coming back to intention though, like just the desire for $1 million falls a little flat. But if there's something underneath that desire for $1 million, for example, a cottage in the Laurentians where you could go and have a better quality of life, I imagine manifesting that money is a little bit more easy or a little bit more fluid than wanting $1 million for the sake of wanting $1 million.
Well, what I've noticed is when you try to manifest from that place of what in the yoga world, what we call ego, which means that place of I'm either too small or I'm too big. It's either one of those things, or that those feelings of lack, those feelings of resentment, those feelings of anger, those feelings of frustration. What life will do is it will give you sort of like an opportunity to see that. And then when you kind of allow yourself, you oh my gosh, okay, wow, it's like, wow, I judge every single person with money. Because the interesting thing is, I've noticed even people who are privileged are sometimes afraid of the stigma that they will get from having so much money. I've heard this also in the community, who are, they almost like they dress down because they don't want to be like, oh my gosh, I don't want my yogi friends to think like I'm this, right, like whatever, privileged person. And but it's like, that's also shame, right? So the one, I think, whatever people want, they should want what they want. But those two places, when it comes from that place of lack, from resentment, from those places, life will give you an opportunity to see that in yourself. And then when you start to release those things, then it will give you it more from a place, when you're kind of working from that place where your mind is clear and your heart is, you're going from your heart. So if it's really from that kind of like truthful desire, then the manifestation, whatever it is, because it's not the thing, right? You're allowed to want what you want. Like, okay, I'm just telling it, everybody who's listening to the podcast, you're allowed to want whatever the F you want. But what it's going to show you is your intention behind it. You see? So there shouldn't be any judgment of whatever it is you want, you can want it. It's okay. But when it comes really from that place of your heart, I think that's when there's going to be less of that part in you that's rubbing up against your face, kind of life trying to say, hey, yeah, you want that, but let me just show you this. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for you to receive it in a place of abundance. Because you can win me and you can win $1 million tomorrow, but if we're both in lack, that is going to be gone in like 2 seconds, because we haven't learned how to, and I'm just hypothetically speaking, we haven't learned how to really live in abundance of appreciation, of awe, like, holy effing, like, oh my God, this, like, what happened? Like in that place where we were born into. Like if you see children and they find like this random thing and they get so excited, like, oh my God, look at that. Like, when we can live from that place, that's where it becomes expansive and more, I'd say, sustainable, if this is making sense.
It's all making perfect sense. I mean, I'm just thinking of it's a magnet, right? You have a shitty day and the shit just keeps rolling in. You have a great day. Excuse me, the sun is shining. This is the best day ever, right? And you smile at people on the street, and it's just, you're just a magnet for goodness, or you're a magnet for shit. You can't really be in a in a bad mood for too long and be bowled over by all this good stuff. I think we've all had good and bad days lately, but it's and what I'm hearing from you is that, the living in a place of gratitude in the day-to-day can then also translate into being a money magnet, if you wish.
Well, it's a byproduct of abundance, right? When you are in the frequency, and not this postured frequency, okay? Because I see that also a lot too, and I'm guilty of it. The only reason why I see things is because it happened in me, right? Where it's like, yes, I'm a yogi and I'm detached and I don't want anything, and or I'm very like calm and joyful, but really like all of a sudden somebody looks you the wrong way. You're like, oh, what's up with you? Like, you know, like, so it's not that postured role that you're playing. It really is the frequency that you're living in, right? So like there's that nuance of like, are you really
you can't fake the frequency.
You can't.
You can have a facade. You can look like, you can wear your Lululemon.
Right. Right.
You can go smoke a pack of cigarettes in the back and nobody saw you do it. But are you meditating from time to time?
And the thing is, even if you're smoking a pack of cigarettes, even if you're shitty, even if you like, you know, give the finger to somebody that cut you off, like, can you, in that moment, still hold yourself with so much tenderness and love? You know, because that's we're human beings with both. We have our like ugly, whatever you want to call it, that side of
well,
us.
we can call it shadow side, right? And this is a big part, from what I understand, this has to be a big part of spiritual work. I think there's a lot in the community of, you said postured, and I just think of this facade of like, oh, light and love, and like we all know these stereotypical, but Jayme and I will fucking swear up a storm when we're talking, you know, having a glass of tea. I don't think we've ever drunk together, but you know, it's there's lightness and dark in everything, including your friendly neighborhood yoga teacher.
and the thing is, the beauty of our relationship is we show up as ourselves, right? It's like, if we're in a shitty mood, we're like, dude, I'm not feeling this, and like, that's the truth. And it's like, to be able, and again, it's not from a postured place, but if we have allowed ourselves enough time in our own frequency, we're like, okay babe, like, let me just give you a hug, like, what's up, like, just come right here, tell me all the shitty, give it to me. I can.
It sounds very, very familiar. It sounds like maybe you and I might have had an experience. Thank you for that, by the way. Thank you. I was in a shit mood the other day and Jayme got stuck talking to me. So thanks. I hung my head, but I knew you didn't judge me for it. We've all been there.
It's all good. And that's the beauty of it. Like, that's the beauty, is that you had enough trust in me to show up really as yourself.
It's it. Had you been a stranger, you would have got the facade. You would have got the thing we have to do when we're not.
Right. Yeah. And it was so healing. I find it was so good that you were like, this is really how I feel right now. And it's like, great.
It's true. Thank you. Because I wish everybody has people like that in their life, because there's a precious few people that see the real Jenny B.
and the thing is, I think that's true for everybody. There is a precious few. And the real question is, can you see yourself, you know, in those times where you whatever you want to call it, like, can you really see it? And again, of course, the first time you see your shit, you're like, ooh, like, oh no, like, go away. Like, you judge yourself. There's a whole like pattern where first you're just looking through the pattern. Second, you look at it, you're like, whoa, boy, okay. No, you're not. Like, I find it's very interesting. I find that part where we're seeing something that is not so pretty about ourselves. A lot of people in the spiritual community, I'm gonna call it out, like we call it detachment, but really it's a numbing, because it's like, and no judgment, because sometimes things are so painful, right? We've experienced things that were so traumatic that that was our defense. We had to numb out, right? But at a certain point, the only kind of way of actually really healing is to when you're ready, because there's always a readiness to start to get closer to that deeper pain, that you realize actually, and what I've realized, it's actually a gift, right? It's like this gift. And the way I see it energetically, it's like this gift, this fuse that's been building, and it's like, and you feel like, oh, why do I have this stupid thing? And I want it just to go away because I just want to be a spiritual person. And then you realize, you start to see like, oh my gosh, first of all, as a young kid, I was actually super infinitely powerful to be able to take all of that crap, right, and hold it with such love and grace. Because children, right? Even if mommy, daddy, or whatever is not so nice, we will still love. And so you take that thing, and then when you start to realize it's actually a jewel in disguise, and it becomes this gift.
I just saw a meme on Facebook, Bhaskar Goswami, who was the first guest that ever came on this show, and it was a photo of Lauryn Hill, and the quote was something like, "Don't be a hard rock, you're a gem."
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes. And it's so funny because he's in my mind right now. It's so funny that you're talking about him, because I know that he was also one of your first guests. So it's like, it's funny.
That's when you said that holding there. And I think too, it's just, this whole conversation has been about shame and about money shame, but we see how it's there in everyday life, whether it's because we flipped the bird to somebody or, got bitchy with a friend. The shame is there. So how can we then laugh about it and be more light about it and move on, right?
Right. And I also think we have to be ready and wanting and willing, not that everybody has to kind of go past the superficial maintenance, because when we practice yoga, like breathe in, breathe out, we have like a high afterwards and like, whoa, that was great. But if we're not really getting to the deep surface, that chronic thing is always going to show up, and it's going to continue to say, hey, remember, and there's like no way getting around it until you're like, okay, all right, show me what you got, and then that's true liberation, because you start to allow even that part of you to be free, right? Like that part of you that had all of that shame, all of that guilt, all of that blame, all of that trauma, that part of you can also just be free. Like she or he can be like, yes, you're free to be really.
Wow, thank you, Jayme. I'm so happy that we took this time. This was such a good. We didn't know after that conversation the other night. We didn't know how this would go, but I think it turned out for the best for everybody. I'm wondering, can you tell people where they can find you and sort of some of your offerings at the moment on this subject?
So the best place to find me is in my Facebook group, The Discipline of Business and Yoga, because I give a free training every single week, 1 hour training, and it's very much like the way we are talking now. I'm not what's the word, small talker. Like, we get deep and we talk, we do real talk, right? So if you want a place where, and I call it a vortex, right? If you want a vortex where you really can voice, your struggles, voice, your inner truth, voice like, oh my gosh, I want to be expansive. All of that, you can come into this safe place and be you, because that's ultimately like, again, another natural byproduct. Abundance is a natural byproduct when you really are allowing yourself to be who you are. And like, what the heck does that mean anyway? But that's what I think that's what we're all trying to figure out, right? But that's what my intention is in that group, is to do that. And so I teach clients, and I call them spiritual entrepreneurs, to we heal our deep-rooted traumas. And when we do that, when that clearing starts to happen, and when we have that in our toolkit, then naturally whatever it is you want to offer to the world starts to come more clear, because you're actually, there's not like this shame of like, oh, is that too big? Is that too much? Is that, oh my gosh, you're like, oh, okay, that you start to clear your body, clear your mind, clear your energy, and then that message from your soul starts to come in louder and clearer. And then slowly you start to release that, and then you start to allow yourself to take action on it, because you're in a place where you're allowed. And that's what that group is. Like, you're allowed to want what you want and to be who you are.
Oh, sold. And it's open to anybody who wants to join? What is the process of joining it? Sounds great.
You click on the Discipline of business and yoga Facebook group.
We'll link down to the bottom. Yeah, we'll link down so people see it.
So,
and wonderful, good. Thank you so much, Jayme. I look forward to seeing you. There was a time where we saw much more of each other in person, right? I look forward to it again, hopefully soon, hopefully in the sunshine.
Thank you so much, Annette. And I really do appreciate you. I thank you so much. I really appreciate our friendship, and I love everything that you are. So, yes, I hope to continue this connection, whether it's on these.
Yeah, man, I'll be in your group. I'm coming to your business group. I'm sold. It sounds fun. I'll see you there.
All right.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.